Hidden beneath her composed exterior, Federal Agent Vanessa Carter felt her pulse race as she listened to the judge scoff at her brother's innocence. She could end this charade in a single moment, but she knew better than to act impulsively. Timing was everything in both protection and justice. Sitting in the grand chambers of Brookdale County Courthouse, she carefully measured her next move, knowing it would alter everything. "You clearly lack an understanding of the law," Judge Holloway sneered, his sharp voice echoing off the marble walls. The morning light glinted off his graying hair, casting shadows across his stern face. His reputation for handing down harsh, prejudiced rulings trailed him like an unshakable shadow, particularly in cases involving defendants who didn't fit his narrow sense of justice. Vanessa's fingers brushed against the badge hidden beneath her fitted blazer. Over a decade of protecting diplomats and investigating high-level threats had conditioned her to remain calm under pressure. She had faced adversaries far more powerful and dangerous than this narrow-minded judge. But this wasn't about her. This was about her brother, Devin, a man who had become another casualty of a justice system that was built to work against him. This is the story of courage and consequence, where a sister's bold decision could either free her brother or bring down everything she had worked for. As the tension thickened in courtroom 5A, Vanessa prepared to dismantle every false assumption Judge Holloway had made about the quiet woman he had dismissed without a second thought. The heavy wooden doors of courtroom 5 stood like a barricade before Vanessa, a gatekeeper to the battlefield within. Years of investigative work had trained her to assess environments instantly, to scan for threats, read microexpressions, and maintain absolute composure. But as she looked toward the defendant's table, where Devin sat hunched in his seat, burdened by false allegations, something far deeper than training took over. "The evidence speaks for itself," Prosecutor Hensley declared, pacing across the floor in measured steps, his voice dripping with confidence. "Mr. Carter has demonstrated a blatant disregard for lawful authority." Vanessa's hands tightened into fists beneath the table. The courtroom screen displayed the grainy footage that supposedly justified Devin's arrest. But she had studied it frame by frame, using the same analytical precision that had cracked international threats wide open. The real story was clear. The use of force had been unwarranted. Every compliance cue Devin had given had been ignored. Judge Holloway barely glanced at the screen before shifting his gaze toward Vanessa's brother with thinly veiled contempt. The expression was all too familiar, one she had encountered throughout her years in federal law enforcement. The same dismissive arrogance, the same blind assumption of guilt. "Your Honor," Devin's appointed attorney began hesitantly, his voice unsure. "If we review the footage again, you'll see." "We've seen enough," Holloway cut in, waving a hand as though swatting away an inconvenience. "Unless you have something meaningful to contribute." Vanessa inhaled deeply, her fingers brushing against the badge pressed against her ribs. Her heartbeat drummed a steady rhythm. "Not yet, not yet." "Ms. Carter," Holloway drawled, shifting his cold stare toward her. "You seem rather invested in these proceedings. Perhaps you'd like to enlighten the court with your legal expertise?" The room went still. Vanessa slowly rose from her seat, every eye in the courtroom turning toward her. She had been trained for this. When to speak, when to strike, when to turn someone's overconfidence into their greatest weakness. "Your Honor," she began, her voice even and controlled, laced with the quiet authority of someone who had commanded rooms far more intimidating than this one. "I'd be happy to share my professional insight." Holloway smirked. "Oh, and what expertise might that be?" Vanessa reached into her blazer, every gaze locked on the movement. 11 years with the Federal Security Division, Your Honor. Identification number 4826. Holloway's smirk vanished the moment Vanessa placed her credentials on the table. A murmur spread through the gallery. Even Prosecutor Hensley faltered, shifting uncomfortably. "I've reviewed this case through the lens of federal investigative procedures," Vanessa continued smoothly. "The footage clearly demonstrates an unnecessary escalation of force against a compliant civilian. Every movement my brother made followed recommended civilian response protocols. Yet, the responding officers chose to escalate rather than de-escalate." A visible flush spread across Holloway's face, but he quickly masked it with indignation. Agent Carter, your credentials, while impressive, do not grant you special authority in my courtroom. Vanessa met his glare with unwavering calm. No, Your Honor, but they do ensure that this case will not go unchallenged. Silence settled over the courtroom like a weight. And in that moment, for the first time, Holloway seemed to understand. He had underestimated the wrong woman. No, Your Honor, Vanessa said steadily. Truth stands on its own. I'm just making sure it's heard. The jury exchanged glances, some nodding slightly. She had spent the trial planting seeds of doubt, and now they were taking root. Across the table, Devin squeezed her hand, trust, fear, and hope passing between them. She had protected political figures from threats, but today, standing between her brother and injustice, felt like the most important assignment of her career. As the trial progressed, Vanessa dismantled the prosecution's case with precision. Her years in federal security gave weight to her testimony, turning weak objections into undeniable truths. The prosecution wants you to believe questioning authority is resisting it, Vanessa stated. But real justice demands we question, challenge, and stand firm against wrongdoing. Judge Holloway slammed his gavel. Agent Carter, you're close to contempt. Vanessa met his gaze. With all due respect, Your Honor, contempt means disregarding justice. I hold justice above all else, which is why I won't stay silent. A charged silence filled the room. Holloway had underestimated her, dismissing the most critical detail. Sometimes justice walks in with a badge, not handcuffs. The jury deliberated for just under 2 hours. Not guilty, the forewoman declared. Devin exhaled a shaky breath, gripping Vanessa's hand. Tears stung her eyes as relief washed over them both. Outside, reporters swarmed, eager for a statement about the agent who challenged a judge. But Vanessa moved through the chaos with quiet precision. How did you stay so calm? Devin asked as they reached her car. She smiled. Because justice, like protection, requires patience, precision, and knowing when to act. 6 months later, Vanessa stood at a packed community center, speaking to law enforcement trainees and civil rights advocates. That courtroom taught me something deeper than tactics, she said. True protection isn't just about shielding dignitaries. It's about guarding justice, especially when it whispers instead of shouts. Devin now mentored at-risk youth, while Vanessa balanced her career with advocacy. As she traced the edge of her badge, she recalled the moment Holloway realized his authority was no match for truth. Because real change begins with a single moment, one act of courage that ripples far beyond a courtroom.